I mean, just picture your absolute favorite cozy 90s sitcom.
Oh yeah, the ultimate comfort watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the brightly lit coffee shop, the witty banter, that comforting theme song kicking in while you just sit back on the couch.
Right, it feels like spending time with old friends.
It really does. It's a world where every single problem gets neatly solved in exactly 22 minutes.
Yeah.
But now, take that warm, fuzzy image, and I want you to picture that exact same set at, say, 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday.
A very different picture.
Completely different. The studio audience has been sitting there for 6 hours. The exhausted actors are absolutely furious. The frantic writers are throwing vicious insults behind their backs. And someone is breaking out the cocaine just to keep the entire production moving.
Yeah, the contrast between the polished product that aired on Thursday nights and the actual human reality on the soundstage is, I mean, it's staggering.
It is.
When you look closely at the environment required to produce a cultural phenomenon of that magnitude, you quickly realize it is rarely as friendly as the title of the show might suggest.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack that stark contrast. We are putting the beloved, squeaky clean image of the monster 90s hit Friends up against the gritty, high stress, and honestly, sometimes genuinely toxic reality of its creation.
Right, and we're drawing from a collection of insider production insights,
Mhm.
behind-the-scenes commentary, and some direct quotes from Lisa Kudrow.
Who, of course, played the wonderfully eccentric Phoebe Buffay.
Exactly. So we were looking strictly at the raw facts and the unfiltered dynamics of what it actually took to build one of the most profitable television shows in human history.
Which is wild. So setting the stage for this, I guess we have to look directly at the nerve center of any sitcom, right?
Yeah, everything begins and ends in the writer's room.
Okay, let's unpack this because the specific allegations about this particular writer's room completely shatter the wholesome illusion of the show for me.
Oh, absolutely.
Based on the direct accounts we are reviewing, Lisa Kudrow revealed that this room, which is made up of about 12 to 15 staff members.
And was almost entirely male, we should add.
Yes, almost entirely male. She said it was an incredibly brutal, caustic environment.
Yeah, it was far from the place of polite, supportive collaboration. The accounts describe an atmosphere of intense, just relentless scrutiny.
Because they were recording in front of a massive live audience, right?
Mhm.
Like 400 people.
Right.
So if an actor flubbed a line, or even if they delivered the dialogue perfectly, but it just didn't get that explosive, perfect laugh from the crowd, the writers would aggressively criticize them behind the scenes.
And we're talking about incredibly demeaning comments here.
Yeah, like quotes such as, "Can't she blanking read?" Or, "She's not even trying, she messed up my line."
Which is brutal.
It is. And Kudrow also noted that during these grueling late nights, the male writers would openly discuss their personal sexual fantasies about her co-stars, Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox.
Which, adds a deeply uncomfortable, highly inappropriate layer of sexism to a workplace that is already practically vibrating with stress.
Oh, it sounds like a nightmare. I mean, by today's HR standards, that entire room would be shut down, investigated, and disbanded by noon.
Without a doubt.
But I hear all of this, and I have to play devil's advocate for just a second. Was this room uniquely malicious? Or is this just the ugly, unvarnished reality of how the comedy sausage gets made?
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of comedy writing itself
Yeah.
and the specific mechanics of multicam television.
Okay.
You have to look at the kind of personality that gravitates toward this profession in the first place. It inherently attracts highly observant, sarcastic, and often very caustic people.
Right, because that's where the jokes come from.
Exactly. That caustic nature is quite literally the fuel for the comedy. It is the reason the jokes have bite. But when you put 15 of those massive insecure personalities in a single room, and they are all competing to get their specific joke on the air,
The ego dynamics have to be insane.
it become incredibly volatile.
I hear you about ego, but these are highly paid professionals. Surely there's a fundamental difference between fiercely protecting a joke you wrote and actively mocking a coworker's basic reading ability behind their back.
There is, but you have to understand the survival mechanism at play during a live taping.
What do you mean?
Well, normally in television, a script is evaluated during a table read. Everyone sits in a room, reads the script out loud, and you figure out what works in the safe environment.
Right.
But on a taping night, you have 400 people judging the material in real time. A writer might spend 3 days crafting a joke they think is absolute genius.
Oh, and if the actor delivers it and the audience responds with dead silence?
Exactly. That writer experiences immediate, public, terrifying rejection. Their worth is tied entirely to that laughter.
So when the laugh doesn't happen, panic sets in.
The panic is existential. Their immediate defense mechanism, simply to protect their ego and their job security, is to offload the blame entirely onto the performer. The internal logic becomes, well, it was hilarious when I wrote it, so her acting must have ruined it.
Which is so toxic.
It absolutely does not excuse the cruelty or the sexism, not at all, but it explains the mechanical reality of the room. The actors become the easiest targets for a writer's professional terror.
But you can only sustain that kind of terror if you have the physical energy for it, which I guess brings us to the actual hours they were working.
Oh, the hours were punishing.
Yeah, the psychological pressure was intense, but the physical reality of this production schedule sounds like the ultimate high-stakes group project where the writers do all the homework, the actors get the A+, and everyone is running on absolute zero sleep.
Yeah, the physical toll of network television in the 1990s cannot be overstated. Today, a hit show on a streaming platform might ask for 8 or maybe 10 episodes.
Right, and then the cast takes a year off.
Exactly. But a network sitcom in the 90s demanded an unbelievable volume of content. They were required to crank out 22 to 26 episodes every single year.
The math on that is staggering.
It really is.
Yeah.
The production cycle typically required working for 3 straight weeks to rehearse and shoot, taking just 1 week off, solely to let the writers try to catch up on the next scripts, and then starting all over again.
So out of the calendar year, that eats up roughly 35 weeks of relentless, high-intensity production.
Yep.
And the taping nights themselves were a marathon. We're talking about filming late into the night, often wrapping the main shoot at 1.0 or 2.0 in the morning.
With a live audience sitting there the whole time.
Right. That audience of 400 people had to be kept in their seats for hours upon hours. The production literally hired a warm-up comedian and a live band just to keep the crowd's energy from completely flatlining while the writers argued over script changes in the background.
It was essentially an endurance test disguised as a glamorous television taping. And the insider accounts highlight a crucial pivot point in the night, which is the moment the audience finally goes home.
Okay, usually around midnight, right?
Yeah, the crowd leaves, but the work isn't done. The crew has to stick around to film the pickup shots.
Let's clarify that for a second. A pickup shot is when they have to go back and refilm all the flubbed lines or mistakes or alternate camera angles that they missed during the live performance, right?
Precisely. And they have to do it without the adrenaline and laughter of the live crowd.
That sounds miserable.
It is incredibly tedious work.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the production insiders, once the audience vanished and those pickup shots began, the professional environment degraded entirely.
Yeah, the accounts mention that late at night, a serious party atmosphere would take over the soundstage. We're talking about booze and even cocaine being brought out openly on set just to get people to the finish line.
It's like trying to defuse a bomb, but half the bomb squad hasn't slept in 3 days, and the other half is chemically altered.
Wow.
You have exhausted actors, stressed writers, and a profoundly warped late-night atmosphere. And this is exactly where the power dynamics of a hit show start to break down completely.
Because in the first season, the actors are just grateful to have a job.
Right. But once the show becomes a mega hit, their leverage skyrockets and professionalism plummets.
The sources mention that actors would start changing lines on the fly during takes, which deeply offended the writers.
Naturally.
But wait, if an actor just decides to change a carefully crafted line, what can a writer even do? Can't the producers just step in and fire the actor for being unprofessional?
Not when the actor is the main attraction, bringing in millions of viewers.
I guess that's true.
Take Woody Harrelson on the sitcom Cheers as a prime example of this leverage.
Oh, this is a crazy story.
It is. Once Harrelson realized how indispensable he was to the show's success, he became famous among insiders for simply skipping mandatory rehearsals.
And why?
Because he wanted to go hang out and meet Allen Iverson, the basketball player.
Just to go hang out.
Yeah, he knew full well that the network couldn't fire him without destroying the show.
He was completely bulletproof. So when you have 15 writers fighting for their professional lives and actors suddenly asserting this untouchable dominance, friction isn't just likely, it's practically guaranteed.
Exactly. There is a direct inverse relationship between massive Hollywood success and standard workplace professionalism.
The bigger the show, the worse the behavior.
Yeah. As the cultural power and the financial stakes go up, the normal rules of human decency, collaboration, and professional courtesy often completely evaporate.
Which begs a massive question.
What's that?
If the environment was this volatile, if the hours were this miserable and the power struggles were this exhausting, Why didn't the crew just walk off set? Why did everyone stay?
Oh, that's easy.
The answer is tied to a number with a whole lot of zeros behind it.
The golden handcuffs. Unprecedented, astronomical generational wealth.
We are talking about millions upon millions of dollars. Once a show like this hit, the revenue stream was exponential. It wasn't just the base salary for acting or writing.
No, not at all.
It was the merchandising, the lunchboxes, the posters, the massively popular DVD box sets, and then the absolute goldmine of syndication deals.
Oh, the syndication money was absurd.
Getting paid staggering amounts of money simply for the show to air in reruns every single afternoon on local channels across the globe.
The sheer volume of money generated by a hit of this scale fundamentally alters reality for everyone in its orbit. The network doesn't just want the show to succeed. They structurally need it to survive at all costs.
To really illustrate how insane 90s television money was, the sources detail this incredible story about the medical drama ER.
Yes.
After several highly successful seasons, the producers actually wanted to pull the plug. They felt the creative storyline had naturally run its course, and it was time to end on a high note.
Which is rare in Hollywood.
Very. But the network absolutely refused to let them stop.
Because ER was what the industry calls a tentpole. It was the massive central pillar that held up the network's entire weekly schedule.
They could launch brand new, totally unproven shows in the time slot right after ER, knowing that 30 million people were already sitting on their couches tuned in.
Exactly.
The advertising dollars for the entire night depended on that 1 hour of television. So to keep ER alive, the network paid millions of dollars extra per episode. They didn't even care if the show itself turned a profit anymore. They just needed it to anchor the entire broadcasting system.
And when you are dealing with a bottomless corporate budget like that, you can literally buy compliance from your staff.
The story goes that a production guy walked around the set with a thick bundle of envelopes, handing out massive, untraceable cash bonuses to everyone.
Just handing out cash?
Yeah, from the camera operators to the people serving snacks at craft services. And it always came with a quiet little whisper like, hey, if we go a few hours overtime tonight, you're not going to complain, are you?
Because nobody complains when everyone is getting rich. This is the classic Hollywood don't rock the boat ecosystem.
Right.
When there are private Gulfstream jets, vacation homes, and millions of dollars on the line, the entire system, actors, writers, directors, and crew, is financially incentivized to tolerate, ignore, or even fiercely protect toxic behavior.
But this brings up a massive empathy gap. Critics of Lisa Kudrow's complaints point out that everyday workers, waitresses, secretaries, retail employees endure horrible workplace abuse, terrible bosses, and awful conditions for minimum wage every single day.
They absolutely do.
So here's where it gets really interesting. At what point does a massive paycheck invalidate your right to complain about your boss? Does making tens of millions of dollars mean you just have to smile, take the abuse, and be grateful?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the ultimate paradox of privilege. On a fundamental human level, no one deserves to be spoken to disrespectfully or subjected to a hostile, sexist environment, regardless of their tax bracket.
Exactly.
Mental health doesn't scale with income. But on a practical, societal level, the general public struggles immensely to generate sympathy for someone complaining from a multi-million-dollar pedestal.
Because everyone else is suffering for free.
Pretty much. The unspoken societal expectation is that the exorbitant money is essentially hazard pay. You sold your peace of mind, but you are compensated with generational wealth for the trouble.
So what does this all mean for us right now? We are talking about a television show that went off the air 20 years ago. Why is this specific behind-the-scenes drama suddenly dominating headlines and social media feeds today?
To understand the timing, we have to look at this through the modern cultural lens. The landscape of what we consider acceptable in media, both on screen and behind the scenes, has shifted dramatically since 1994.
It really has. A lot of the mega hits from the 90s and early 2000s, shows like The Office, Seinfeld, and certainly Friends, are going through intense modern reevaluations.
Oh, yeah.
Critics today frequently point out the glaring lack of diversity, noting that the core casts of these shows set in massive diverse cities were almost entirely white.
And the content of the humor itself is being put under a modern microscope.
The sources note that Friends specifically gets called out for jokes that have aged terribly. There are punchlines at the expense of the trans community, repetitive jokes treating gayness as a punchline, or the constant mocking framing of Ross's lesbian ex-wife.
Right.
Because of this, the show has become a highly visible target for progressive and activist media to frame negatively. And just to be clear to you, the listener, our goal here isn't to take a side on whether those modern critiques are, objectively right or wrong.
Right, we're not taking a stance on that.
We're simply acknowledging that they are a massive part of the conversation surrounding the show today. It has become a symbol of a past era's cultural blind spots.
It is vital to acknowledge that the standards have evolved.
Right.
But there is also a highly cynical, deeply pragmatic industry perspective on why this specific story about a toxic writer's room is coming out right now.
The public relations angle.
Precisely. The entertainment industry runs entirely on relevance. Some insiders look at this situation and argue that highlighting the dark side of a universally beloved show is a brilliant strategic move.
How so?
Well, if you look at the current media landscape, Lisa Kudrow hasn't been as front and center in major projects recently compared to her co-stars like Jennifer Aniston or Courtney Cox.
Ah, okay. So the cynical theory is that stepping forward to complain about the dark, hidden underbelly of a culturally sacred show is just a surefire way to get the internet algorithm to say your name again.
Yep.
That it's performative complaining designed to generate headlines.
This raises an important question, and it really leaves us trying to synthesize two very different motivations. On one hand, a toxic workplace is a toxic workplace.
Right.
The stress, the inappropriate comments, the crushing pressure that was a lived reality for the people in that building, regardless of the paycheck.
But on the other hand,
trying to cleanly analyze a 1990s comedy writer's room through the rigid, highly sensitive lens of the 2020s is incredibly difficult. It often flattens a nuanced, chaotic, artistic environment into easy fodder from modern culture wars.
it takes something complicated and three-dimensional and flattens it into a simple narrative of good guys versus bad guys.
And the reality is that creating groundbreaking, culture-defining comedy usually requires breaking a few things along the way. In highly pressurized systems, everyone eventually becomes a villain to someone else.
That makes a lot of sense.
The writers felt abused by the actors' egos, the actors felt abused by the writers' cruelty, and the crew was exhausted by all of it. But modern internet discourse prefers clear heroes and clear villains, which doesn't really map onto a 2.0 AM soundstage fueled by exhaustion, cocaine, and artistic desperation.
So to bring this all together, we started today by looking past that warmly lit, comforting coffee shop set. We walked onto the real stage 24 at 1 in the morning, where exhausted actors and panicked writers were locked in a caustic clash over jokes and ego.
It's a heavy image.
We saw how the unbelievable financial incentives, the syndication money, the massive tentpole network budgets acted as golden handcuffs, keeping everyone quiet while the pressure mounted. And we explored how our modern cultural lens often warps our view of nostalgia, turning old workplace tensions into brand new PR strategies.
It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that the art we love is almost never created in the pristine, happy conditions we want to imagine.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
Okay.
If immense wealth and legendary artistic success almost always demand a severe trade-off in personal well-being, mental health, or basic workplace respect, at what dollar amount does a toxic environment become acceptable to you?
That's the real question.
Does the end product of beloved, timeless art justify the chaotic, messy, and sometimes cruel means of its creation? Or are we simply making excuses for bad behavior just because the jokes still make us laugh?
It's a profound question of where we draw the line between the value of the art and the humanity of the artist's environment.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking past the surface and keep questioning the stories behind the stories.